Okay, I'll do better. The PVC bow. If you search YouTube, you'll find many videos and channels about making PVC bows, most notably Nick from the Backyard Bowyer. If you've never seen his channel, do yourself a favor and check it out. He's a real player in the DIY apocalypse prepping scene. Anyway, I've watched a million videos, and I think I can put my own spin on the PVC bow. So let's do this. So here are the supplies you're going to need for this project. You'll need some 3/4 inch PVC, some 1 inch PVC, and some 1 1/4 inch PVC. I'm using white PVC pipe instead of gray because according to the Backyard Bowyer, it makes a better performing bow. I'm also going to be using 4 of these fiberglass driveway markers. I got these at the Home Depot and they are 4 feet long and just under 5/16 of an inch thick. Now there were yellow ones and there were orange ones, and the orange ones were slightly thicker, but the yellow ones are the perfect size for what I'm doing. You're also going to need a bowstring, and I actually bought this one on AliExpress for $3. It's a 10-ply string and it's 147 centimeters long, which is roughly 4 feet 10 inches. Now if I didn't have this bowstring, I would just use paracord. And as for tools, you're definitely going to need a hacksaw and a heat gun. Now I'm going to be using some other power tools to make things easier because I have access to them. But for the most part, these 2 tools plus some sandpaper should get you where you need to go. So we're going to start with our 3/4 inch PVC. Now all the PVC that I bought for this project came in 10-foot lengths, and I have gone ahead and cut this piece in half, thus creating 2 5-foot sections. 5 feet is a respectable length for a recurve bow, and not only that, now I have the materials to make a second bow if I so choose. But anyway, here's my plan. First of all, this is going to be a recurve bow, so I need to take my 5-foot section of PVC and angle both ends to about 30 degrees using the heat gun. I'm also going to take a 2-foot section of my 1 inch PVC and put it around the main body of the bow, thus strengthening the center. I'm going to angle the ends, but that's strictly a stylistic decision. It shouldn't impact the functionality. I'll then use small rings of my 1 1/4 inch PVC to mark the handle and also create an arrow rest. So let's get started. So now that I've got my 5 feet of 3/4 inch PVC, I need to cut my middle section of 1 inch PVC. This piece is going to be 2 feet long. Failure, failure, failure. This plan failed spectacularly, and I ended up ruining one of my 5-foot lengths of 3/4 inch pipe. It's a good thing I had that other half as a backup. So what happened was, no matter what I tried, I could not get that 1 inch section over the 3/4 inch pipe. The internal diameter of the 1 inch pipe was just about 1/16 of an inch too small. I tried removing material from the inside of the pipe using sandpaper and a drill, but that just did not remove enough material to make a difference. The only other alternative I could think of was to use the heat gun method like I used in my nunchucks video. I knew that had a very small chance for success, but this didn't work either because it just had too far to travel. It ended up getting hung up about halfway. So after scrapping that plan, I came up with a new one. This time I'm taking my 1 inch diameter middle section and making a cut down one side. This way I can just hammer it on to the 3/4 inch main body of the bow. Now I know by making this cut, I'll be sacrificing some of the bow's rigidity, but I think I can make up for it by sliding on 2 6-inch sections of 1 1/4 inch PVC over either end of the middle piece. Now luckily, the internal diameter of the 1 1/4 inch PVC is big enough to just slide right over that 1 inch, so I don't have to do any kind of fancy tricks. So let's start cutting these pieces and then I'll be ready to assemble the bow. Ooh, look what I got for Christmas. I'm going to use this table saw to cut my 1 inch PVC at a 60-degree angle. So here's my 1 1/4 PVC pipe. I'm going to cut 2 6-inch pieces. Now I'll use the table saw to cut the same angle on these 6-inch pieces as I did on the 2-foot-long 1-inch diameter middle piece. And now, using the same 1 1/4 pipe, I'm going to cut the small rings that will mark the handle and act as an arrow rest. Now for the arrow rest, I cut a piece that looks like this. Again, it was cut from the 1 1/4 pipe, and it's about a 1/2 inch thick with this 3-inch protuberance. And the way it will work is, it will sit right above where your hand will be, and I'll use the heat gun to bend this out into a kind of a U shape for the arrow to rest on. Hence the name, arrow rest. So here is the freshly formed arrow rest, and this doesn't have to be this long, so I went ahead and marked where I'm going to go ahead and trim it off. Now I'm going to use the belt sander to just kind of round off these edges. Okay, here are the finished and cut pieces that will make up the middle of the bow. Now it's time to start assembly. The first thing I have to do is hammer this middle piece onto the 3/4 inch diameter main body. I've gone ahead and marked the end points where it should reside, and I'm going to try to hammer it on with this mallet. So let's get started. Whew, that was harder than I thought it was going to be. Now it's time to put the middle section together. Now you probably can't see it, but I've marked here on this middle section where these pieces need to go, and I'll attach them with PVC cement. So the way that PVC cement works is it actually melts the surface of the PVC so that when it dries it's basically welded together. And my 1¼ PVC pieces didn't fit as snugly as I wanted. So what I did was, I took some of the PVC dust from my workbench and mixed it with some of the cement to thicken it up and make it into a kind of a slurry so that it would fill in the gaps. So here it is, all cleaned up and glued together. Right now it's looking like some kind of a PVC Darth Maul lightsaber. Now it's time to start thinking about these driveway markers. I've got 4 of them, and they're 4 feet long. Now I'm going to leave 3 of them as they are, 4 feet long. But one I'm going to cut in half to have 2 2-foot sections. I'm just going to use the hacksaw, and I'm going to wear my respirator because cutting through these fiberglass rods can be dangerous if you breathe in the dust. Now it's time to tackle these fiberglass rods. Let's see if I can't explain this without boring you to death. Like I said, these 3 are going in as is, which should leave about 6 inches on either end of the bow. These 2, on the other hand, are going to be offset a little bit, and for them I will leave about 15 inches from the ends of the bow. Now when they go in, they will look something like this. They'll be in this kind of orientation here, with this being the front of the bow and these being the 3 long ones. But then when I use the heat gun to crimp the ends, it should take those 3 long ones and flatten them out, and they'll be in a row. So let's build this thing. Okay, the fiberglass rods are in. Now I'm going to start using the heat gun to shape the ends of the bow. Right now the front of the bow is facing down, and I'm going to taper the bow down to kind of a flattened area here up to around here. And I don't want this area to become deformed, so I'm going to try and control the heat by wrapping a wet rag around this area. And that should keep that area cool. Okay, looks like we're ready to go. Okay, now that I've got these parts flattened, it's time to start thinking about the remaining 6 inches on either end. I want this bow to have kind of a recurve, and because this is the front of the bow, this side, I need these sections to be tilted up, kind of like that. I'm also going to flatten these ends kind of vertically, kind of squish them in this way, because that's where the bowstring will attach. Now if I were to start heating this up with the heat gun, this area that I've already flattened would start to round back out. And because I do not want that to happen, I'm going to go ahead and take this C-clamp and hold it in place. Okay, let's get started. Hey guys, you remember that part in the beginning of the video where I said I have no idea what I'm doing? No? Well, I guess I forgot to mention it. So I'm probably going to have to start over. I have made this bow entirely too difficult to pull back. In fact, I can't even get the string on it. So yeah, guess I have to start over. I guess it's back to the drawing board. Nah, fuck that. I am going to make it work. Let's make a compound bow. So a compound bow uses pulleys to mechanically reduce a bow's draw weight. Now, full disclosure, I made a second bow, but I made it exactly the same as the old one, except I stopped at the heat gun step. I did have to destroy the old one to get the fiberglass rods out, but before I did that, I used that first bow as a prototype to see if the pulleys would work. I used these two pulleys that I just happened to have, but it turns out they worked too well. They gave the bow a draw weight of about 35 pounds, which is too light for my tastes, and I thought that was kind of a waste considering all of the strength that I had built into this bow. Besides, there are far easier ways to build a 35-pound bow. Therefore, instead of two pulleys, I'm going to go for a single pulley. That should give me a respectable draw weight. I'm hoping for around 50 pounds. So let's get started. So let's make a pulley out of PVC pipe. I've gone ahead and made these flat pieces. All I did was, I took a piece of my 1 1/4 inch PVC pipe, I made a slice down one edge, and then I used the heat gun to soften it up, and then I just pressed it under this piece of wood using a weight. And you end up with a flattened piece of PVC that's about 4 3/4 inches wide. Next, I'm just going to mark my circles with a compass, cut them out, and then shape them into circles with the belt sander. Here are the 3 discs I will use to make the pulley. The outer discs have a diameter of about 4.5 inches, and the inner disc about 3.5 inches. It should look something like this when they're all put together. So the first thing I have to do is drill a 1-inch hole through the center of each disc. I'll be using this spade bit. And to make sure that the pulleys spin freely even when tightened, I'm using a stack of 9 1-inch washers as the core, which ends up being slightly wider than the width of the 3 discs put together. This should create a cylinder that the pulley can, like I said, spin freely around. I went ahead and used the Dremel tool to widen the holes just enough so that they would spin freely. Now I just have to cement them together. So here is my finished PVC pulley. I drilled these holes in it to make it look better, and it also reduces the weight a bit. And as you can see, it spins just fine on my 9-washer axle. Now I'm going to shape the top limb of the bow. This is the top. The pulley is going to be at the bottom end. So I'm just going to heat this up and flatten it straight to a point here. I put a couple marks on the end here so that when I flatten it, I know it'll line up with the rest of the bow. Okay, now we're going to prep the bow for the attachment of the pulley. And this is the bottom of the bow, meaning that if you were shooting it, it would be pointing down. And the idea is to just cut a notch down through here that the pulley can slot into. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I've already marked where the cuts will go, and I've pre-drilled a tiny hole where I'm going to put this 1/2-inch drill bit through. And the same notch will be cut on both sides. So first I'm going to drill the holes, and I'm going to use my Dremel tool to cut these sections out. So here we go. So after cleaning up my cuts with the Dremel tool a bit, I'm left with these 2 brackets that will go on either side of the pulley. Now I'm going to use the heat gun to flatten them out so that they will attach better. So you might notice that these didn't get quite as flat as I had hoped. The shop actually blew a fuse, so I wasn't able to heat it up enough. Now I could have just hit it again after the power was restored, but I think it'll be fine. And I didn't mention it, but I plan to actually abandon the idea of a recurve bow. I just thought it wouldn't be worth the trouble. But after heating this up, you'll notice there's a slight curve in it, which will give me a tiny bit of recurve. I'm sure it won't be enough to make any kind of difference though. Anyway, my next step is to drill the 1/4-inch hole that this bolt will fit through. And I have marked and kind of pre-drilled the spot on both sides. So here goes. So here I have finally attached the pulley to the bow. I had to change its placement. You'll notice the first hole I drilled here, but I had to move it further down to give it a little bit of extra room for the cabling to go through the slot. I also went ahead and used the heat gun to cause this slight curve here. This did not work. The notch that I cut into the PVC to hold the pulley weakened it too much, causing it to buckle under the strain when I drew the bow. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut off that pulley bracket, and I'll still have about 1 inch of empty PVC left before I hit those fiberglass rods. Then I'm gonna take this piece of scrap 1-inch diameter PVC, cut it down to about 6 inches, and then cut it in half lengthwise. I will then take those 2 halves and flatten them out with the heat gun like I did with those pulley discs. Then I will shape them and drill a couple of holes on either end. I want this part to be strong enough to take the strain of the draw, so I have cemented in more flattened pieces of PVC. I'll attach them together like so. So after cleaning it up on the belt sander a little bit, I'm left with this piece here. As you can see, I've drilled a hole through what's left of the bow. So let's go ahead and attach this thing. Lastly, I will attach the pulley to the other end using the same method I did before with all the washers. And if this doesn't work, I will murder someone. So the next step, and almost final step, is to cut the nocks into the other end of the bow. And I've marked where they'll go. I'm just going to use the Dremel tool to kind of cut notches right there. That's where the bowstring will attach to the top of the bow. So here goes. Well, would you look at that? We might just have ourselves a bow. I went ahead and gave the handle a simple paracord wrap. Now let's string it up and shoot some arrows. With the pulley, I can't use that store-bought bowstring, so I'm just using paracord. Tying the loops in the bowstring is really easy. You just make a loop and tie it in a simple square knot. Watching my videos, one gets the impression that I'm this extremely cool, super tough outdoorsman, but I've really only shot a bow a handful of times, so go easy on me if my archery skills are lacking. Sorry about this footage being so dark. For the record, I'm standing about 30 feet away, and my shots are hitting in about an 18-inch group. Oh my God, this project. First of all, let me just apologize to my subscribers for taking so long. Not only was this project fraught with problems and mistakes, but my wife actually had to have jaw surgery, and she needed me to be around full time for her recovery. I tried to explain to her the importance of my YouTube bow, but she was not having it. Anyway, this DIY kind of went off the rails when I started talking about pulleys. At first I wanted to just make a simple long bow, but this turned into a fun experiment. Now, hindsight being 20/20, I think I was on the right track with this thicker outer middle section of the bow. It added stability and rigidity to the project, but in this case, it made the draw weight way too heavy. The solution, therefore, is to make this middle section shorter. This one here is about 24 inches long, but I'll bet if it were more like 18 inches, it would ease up the draw weight to a more manageable amount. But yeah, this was a fun project. I went a little crazy with mine, but you could knock out a lightweight bow really easily and cheaply. Maybe you've got a kid who's into superheroes like Green Arrow or Hawkeye. Or maybe you're a middle-aged man in your garage who is into superheroes like Green Arrow or Hawkeye. Whatever the case, it's a fun weekend project. So thanks for watching, and like and subscribe. I try to put out a video every 2 weeks, but you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I'll try to post on there if a video's taken particularly long, like this one. So, bye.